Hello again, I am Rosalind Robinson, returning for the How to Machine Sewing Basic segment of tonight's program. There are two differences between hand sewing and machine sewing are the way that the fabric is marked and the way that knotting is done. For a machine, we use markings that may be on the machine, or as I'm going to show you today, we're going to mark the machine and the way that we knot the thread. We don't actually knot the thread. We use a backstitching button or a reverse lever button that you have on your sewing machine. So let's take a look at our finished sample first. Here's a finished sample. It has backstitching at the beginning of the seam. Here's our 1/4 inch wide seam. Backstitch here. You see extra stitching. Then you see a single row of stitching the entire length. And then at the end, you see backstitching again at the end. Backstitching takes the place of tying a knot in the thread. Backstitching secures the stitching. It makes sure that the stitching stays in the fabric. Let's take a look at this sample. This is an end of fabric without backstitching, and let's see what happens. We're going to pull and the stitching comes out. This end is with backstitching and the stitching is secure. So we want to always backstitch at the beginning and end of every seam. This takes the place of tying a knot in your thread if you're hand sewing. All right, now we're going to prepare for sewing. It will be step 5 on your instructions. Pin the right side, the right hand side of your fabric strips. All right, now, next I'm going to prepare the machine. Instead of marking the fabric, I'm going to mark the machine with the 1/4 inch marking so that I get a consistent 1/4 inch wide seam. How do I do that? Using this ruler that has 1/4 inch markings, this yellow line is a 1/4 inch line. It's 1/4 of an inch away from the edge of the ruler. Similarly, I want my stitching to be 1/4 of an inch away from the cut edge of the fabric. So I'm going to use the ruler to mark 1/4 of an inch away from the needle, which is going to make that row of stitching. Raise the presser foot, raise the needle, and gently lower the needle onto the 1/4 inch line. And now gently lower the presser foot. I'm going to use a piece of painter's tape and place the painter's tape beside the ruler. This is going to mark where I want the cut edge of the fabric to pass as I sew, so I get consistent 1/4 inch wide seams. I'm marking 1/4 inch away from the needle. Now, gently raise the needle. Raise the presser foot. Remove the ruler. And now I'm ready to sew my 1/4 inch wide seam. As I sew, I want my fabric to pass right by the edge of this tape. Place the cut edge of the fabric at the edge of the tape. Cover the mouth of the throat plate. Your fabric is now in position for sewing. Remember, stitch forward 5 stitches to secure your stitching. Stitch backward and then stitch forward the entire length of this fabric strip. Reverse, forward, keep the cut edge of the cloth running right beside the side of the tape. No space between them. All the way down. Stop. Reverse stitch, 5 stitches, and stitch to the end. Cut thread. Now let's check the stitching. Back stitching at the beginning. And here's a 1/4 inch cube I'm using for quick measure. For consistent 1/4 inch seams. Mark your machine. Some machines have markings. Some machines do not have markings. This way you can be sure that you have marked on your machine where the needle is and 1/4 of an inch away from the needle so that you can get consistent 1/4 inch wide seams every time you sew.